I'm done with you, and I've already sold our lake house to start fresh with my trainer. She chuckled over the phone, her voice dripping with smugness. I kept my tone even, responding, all right, I hear you. My name's Calvin Mercer. At 54, I've spent 22 years as a commercial real estate broker out of Boise, Idaho. My job's all about spotting hidden value in deals others gloss over. Patience, sharp focus, and a knack for catching what slips by, that's my bread and butter. Sad thing is, I didn't turn that same lens on my marriage until it was nearly too late. The call hit me on a Wednesday morning. I was in Rome, wrapping up a storage facility deal for a U.S. logistics firm. 5 days into my trip, 7,000 miles from home, and Lorraine picked that moment to torch our 16-year marriage. Dwayne and I are ready for a new chapter, she went on, her confidence echoing the divorce tales I'd heard from buddies over the years. The lake house went for a solid price. Papers are signed. Dwayne Carver, her personal trainer for the last 20 months, a 36-year-old who rolled up in a flashy SUV he couldn't possibly afford and once had the nerve to ask me the price of my sunglasses. I didn't slam my fist on the hotel desk or yell. I just asked, cool as you please, when do you finalize the sale? Day before yesterday, she said, almost annoyed that I wasn't losing it. New owners move in next week. Figured you'd be fine crashing at a Hilton since you're always traveling. After we hung up, I sat at the hotel desk for a good 45 minutes, staring out at the Roman rooftops. Then I fired up my laptop and shot emails to two people, Brenda Walsh, my title agent for the past 12 years, and Greg Thornton, my lawyer since before Lorraine even came into the picture. Subject line, urgent, shady property sale. Outside, a light drizzle started pattering the Italian streets. I watched folks scurry under awnings, popping open umbrellas, ducking into little espresso joints. 16 years together, and Lorraine didn't know me one bit. She thought I'd just nod along, predictable and spineless, letting her call the shots. But she'd missed one crucial detail. You don't build a career in real estate without learning how to shield what's yours. And you don't leave your life's work to chance, especially when your gut's been whispering for months that something's off at home. I met Lorraine Baxter 17 years back at a real estate expo in Phoenix. She was with a high-end property leasing firm, all polished blazers and razor-sharp drive. Her confidence and quick wit hooked me. Within a year, we tied the knot at a courthouse, just her brother and my cousin there to witness. We snagged the lake house in Coeur d'Alene 3 years later, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, a big porch with a killer view of the water. Dropped $1.4 million, pretty much my whole savings, plus a hefty mortgage. Weekends, I'd be out there fixing the peeling paint, upgrading the bathrooms, or replacing warped porch boards while Lorraine picked out curtains and threw parties for her friends. This place is ours forever, she'd said, clinking her wine glass against mine our first night there. I bought it, hook, line, and sinker. For years, we made it work. She ditched property leasing to launch her own home staging business, which let her tag along on my work trips when the timing lined up. I'd stretch my business trips to squeeze in weekend escapes to Lisbon, Buenos Aires, or Seoul. We were a good team, or so I thought. The first red flag popped up maybe 2 years ago. Little stuff at first. She stopped asking about my deals, and started passing on chances to travel with me. Her texts got curt, almost robotic. Good luck with your meeting. Safe flight. No more, miss you, or hurry home. Then came the gym obsession. 5 days a week, she'd train with Dwayne, a former college linebacker turned fitness guru. I was all for it at first, happy she was getting into shape. But then I started noticing weird charges on our credit card, dinners I wasn't invited to, weekend wellness retreats with people I'd never heard of. I didn't go full paranoid, didn't slap a tracker on her phone or hire a PI like some of my divorced pals. I just watched, kept mental notes, and started bracing for what was starting to feel like a train wreck. About a year ago, I moved the lake house into a living trust. Tucked the paperwork in with some refinancing docs for a rental property we owned in Spokane. Lorraine signed it all without a glance, too busy tapping away on her phone while Greg waited patiently. This keeps our assets safe, I told her. Not a total lie, it did protect the property, just not how she probably pictured it. I never brought it up again, just watched her drift further away, glued to her phone, brushing off any talk of our future. After emailing Greg from Rome, I shut my laptop and pulled the property deed from my briefcase. I always carry it, an old habit from when a client tried to weasel out of a deal, claiming the paperwork wasn't legit. The deed showed the Coeur d'Alene house was locked in the Calvin Mercer Living Trust, with me as the sole trustee. Lorraine had zero legal right to sell it. The irony wasn't lost on me. Back in the day, she'd rib me for my obsession with documents, always reading every line of a contract. "Life's too short for all that fine print, Cal," she'd say with a smirk. But that fine print built my career, and now it was saving my home. I called Greg while strolling through Piazza Navona, the old Roman square buzzing with tourists. "She can't sell what's not hers," he said after I laid it all out. "Any sale she tried to pull off is straight-up fraud. The buyers have no claim. And Lorraine trying to sell property she doesn't own? That's a crime. Could mean charges, though I'm guessing you don't want to go there." He was right, I didn't want Lorraine in handcuffs, despite everything. But I wasn't about to let her walk off with the house, either. "I've reached out to the county clerk's office," Greg added. "We'll get this sorted. They've put a hold on any property transfers, Calvin," Greg told me over the phone. "I'm also reaching out to local title agencies. This deal's dead in the water." After we hung up, I didn't head straight back to my hotel. Instead, I wandered into a cozy little cafe in Rome and ordered an espresso. For nearly 2 hours, I sat there, watching street performers and locals drift by, trying to wrap my head around how 16 years of marriage had crumbled to this. It wasn't rage that hit me, it was a cold, clear understanding. The betrayal wasn't just Lorraine hooking up with another guy or trying to sell our lake house behind my back. It was the way she laughed when she dropped the bomb, like my hurt was just a punchline, like our life together was nothing but a footnote. I fired off a quick text to my Rome client, saying a family crisis was pulling me back home ASAP. Then I booked the earliest flight to Idaho. On the 10-hour flight, I didn't bother with the in-flight movies or my usual deal reports. I just sat there, a weird calm washing over me. For years, I'd handled tricky real estate deals for clients, always sniffing out the leverage points to tilt things their way. Now, I'd turn those skills into my own mess. This wasn't about getting even, it was about fairness, about setting the scales right. By the time the plane landed in Boise, my plan was locked in. I wouldn't shout or beg or try to patch up something that was clearly shattered. I just enforced the contract Lorraine had signed without bothering to skim. I didn't tip Lorraine off that I was coming home early. At the airport, I grabbed a rental car and drove the 50 minutes to Coeur d'Alene, radio off, just me and my thoughts. It was early Saturday afternoon when I rolled into our driveway. A shiny red Corvette I didn't recognize was parked in my usual spot, Dwayne's, I figured. The front door was unlocked, and as I stepped inside, I heard giggles from the kitchen. Lorraine's voice mixed with a guy's, tossing around ideas that sounded like home upgrades. "We should knock out that wall between the den and the dining area first," the guy was saying. "Open layouts are gold for lakefront homes." I set my suitcase down quietly and headed toward the voices. Lorraine was perched against the kitchen counter, wearing a flowy dress I'd never seen, a mimosa in her hand. Dwayne stood close, his arms slung around her hips, gesturing at something on a laptop. They both froze when they spotted me. Lorraine's grin flickered for a second before she plastered it back on. "Calvin," she said, her voice betraying a hint of shock. "Didn't think you'd be back till Tuesday." "Obviously," I said, my eyes flicking to Dwayne, who at least had the sense to pull his arm off my wife. "This is weird," Dwayne mumbled, forcing a chuckle. "Maybe I should bounce." "Nah," I said, keeping my tone steady. "Stick around. Seems like this involves you too." Lorraine's face tightened. "Let's not make this messy, Calvin. I haven't been happy for a while. We both need a clean break." I nodded, cool as a cucumber. "Totally agree. That's why I've already talked to my lawyer about the shady sale you tried to pull." Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" I set my briefcase on the counter and pulled out the trust papers and the property deed. "The lake house isn't yours to sell, Lorraine. Hasn't been for over a year." Dwayne looked lost. "You said the deal was done," he said, turning to her. "It was," she snapped, but I could see doubt creeping into her eyes. "Take a look at the deed," I suggested. "The property's held by the Calvin Mercer Living Trust. You signed it over last June, remember? Those refinancing papers you didn't even glance at." She grabbed the documents from me, her eyes darting over the pages like she could will them to say something else. "This can't be right," she muttered. "Not only is it right, it's ironclad," I said. "The sale you pushed through? It's void. The buyers have already been told." Dwayne's swagger fizzled. "I'll, wait outside," he said, bolting for the door. Once it was just us, Lorraine's shock morphed into fury. "You set me up," she hissed. "Nope," I said, shaking my head. "I protected what's mine, like anyone in my line of work would. You chose not to read what you signed. That's not a setup, it's carelessness." She switched tactics, her voice softening. "Calvin, come on, let's be fair. We can split the money from the house. No need to drag lawyers into this." "Too late for that," I said. "My lawyer's already on it, and the buyers aren't thrilled about trying to buy a house from someone with no legal claim. They're weighing their own moves." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't dare." "I'm not doing anything," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm just upholding the legal ownership of the property. What happens next is up to you." Lorraine's expression turned cold. She snatched her phone off the counter. "I'm calling my cousin's attorney. You're not getting away with this." I didn't argue, just gave a nod. "You should definitely get a lawyer. I'll be at the Marriott in town tonight to give you some space, but let's be clear, this house isn't going anywhere, and I'll be back here Tuesday." As I started to walk out, Lorraine's voice chased after me. "This ain't finished, Calvin." I glanced back at her, standing in the kitchen we'd redone together, mimosa still clutched in her hand. "I reckon it is, Lorraine," I said, my voice steady. Sunday morning, I sat down with Greg at his office in downtown Boise. The place was dead quiet, none of the usual clerks or assistants buzzing around like on weekdays. Greg looked worn out but focused as he spread a stack of papers across his desk. "There's more to this," he said, cutting straight to it. He slid a folder my way. Inside were bank records, credit card slips, and property documents I'd never laid eyes on. "Lorraine's been real busy," Greg went on. "She opened a secret account last year and siphoned off about $190,000 from your joint savings. That number hit me like a sucker punch. It was nearly all of our emergency cash. And check this out," he said, pushing another paper toward me. "Early paperwork for a storefront lease in Missoula. It's in her name and Dwayne Carver's. They're planning to open a yoga studio, a deal signed 4 months back." I stared at the documents, my brain scrambling to catch up. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment fling. This was a cold, calculated plan, brewing for months, maybe longer. "Now it adds up," I muttered, more to myself than Greg. She didn't just want to sell the house for divorce money. She needed startup cash for this venture. Greg nodded. "One more thing. The buyer for your lake house? It's a front company, owned by Dwayne's cousin, Curtis Carver. They were trying to snag the house dirt cheap through this shady sale, probably planning to flip it for a profit after you found out and had to haggle." The puzzle pieces locked together with a sickening click. This wasn't just Lorraine ditching me for another guy. It was a full-on financial con to bleed me dry before tossing our marriage in the trash. Something shifted in me. The calm I'd held onto since her call hardened into something sharper, more deliberate. This wasn't just about guarding what was mine anymore. It was about making sure they answered for it. "What can I do?" I asked. Greg leaned back in his chair. "You're in a solid spot legally. The trust locks down the house. We can freeze the joint accounts to stop any more transfers. The money she already took, though, that's Messier. Idaho's a community property state, so she might claim it was her fair share of marital funds. But the fraudulent sale? That's where we've got her. It's criminal fraud, maybe even grand larceny, depending on how a DA sees it. I'm betting you don't want her behind bars, though." He was right. As much as she'd burned me, I didn't want Lorraine in a cell. But I wasn't about to let her play me for a chump either. "Here's my plan," Greg said, pulling out another document. "We offer a divorce settlement that's reasonable but tough. She coughs up 60% of the money she swiped, gives up any claim to the lake house, and you let her keep her new business venture. Clean split, no criminal charges." I studied the draft, weighing my choices. "And if she says no?" Greg's face turned grim. Then we hit her with every legal tool we've got, including pushing for fraud charges on the house sale. But let's try the civil route first. As I left Greg's office, my phone pinged with a text from Lorraine. My lawyer says you're full of it. The house is ours together, trust or no trust. Catch you in court. I showed it to Greg, who just shook his head. Her lawyer's feeding her garbage. That trust is bulletproof. Send her the settlement offer, I told him. But get ready for a fight. I don't think she's gonna play nice. The rest of Sunday, I holed up in my hotel room, poring over bank statements and property records. Every new detail of Lorraine's double-dealing stoked my determination. This wasn't just about the house anymore, it was about standing tall against someone who thought they could swipe everything I'd worked decades to build. Monday morning, I checked out of the Marriott and drove to the Ada County Courthouse. Greg had filed the divorce papers at the crack of dawn, along with an emergency motion to block any property transfers until the case was settled. By 10:30 a.m., it was official, Lorraine couldn't sell the house, even without the trust in place. Next, I swung by Mountain West Bank and met with the branch manager, Rodney Klein, a guy I'd done deals with back when I was just starting out. In under an hour, I'd cut Lorraine off from my accounts and locked down what was left of my assets. "Anything else I can do for you, Calvin?" Rodney asked as we wrapped up. "Just one thing," I said. "Can you check when the next auto payment to Peak Pulse Fitness is set to go through?" He pulled it up. "There's a $350 charge scheduled for tomorrow. Been running monthly for about 2 years." I nodded. "Kill that payment and any others, except the utilities for the lake house." By lunchtime, I'd updated my credit cards, called my company's HR to tweak my benefits, and touched base with our insurance guy. Step by step, I was unraveling 16 years of financial ties with Lorraine, methodical as you please. My phone kept buzzing all morning, Lorraine, then her cousin, then some number I didn't know, probably her lawyer. I let every call roll to voicemail. Around 3 p.m., I drove back to the lake house in Coeur d'Alene. Lorraine's SUV was gone, but that red Corvette was still parked in the driveway. I let myself in with my key, half-braced for new locks, but they hadn't been changed. Dwayne was in the den, stuffing clothes into a gym bag. He froze when he saw me. "Just grabbing my stuff," he said, his voice rushed. I didn't say a word, just leaned against the doorway, watching him squirm. "Look, dude," he went on, shifting on his feet, "this wasn't about you. Lorraine said you two were done away before I showed up." "Where's she at?" I asked, cutting him off. "Her cousin's place. She's pretty torn up. Says you're trying to wreck her life." I almost chuckled at the nerve of it. "That's her story? I'm the bad guy here?" He shrugged, dodging my stare. "She said you kept her stuck in this town while you jetted around the globe. Controlled everything. And the yoga studio you two were gonna fund with cash from selling my house, was that my doing too?" His eyes flicked up, a dead giveaway that Greg's intel was spot on. "Figured as much," I said. "Let Lorraine know her settlement offer's waiting at Greg Thornton's office. She's got 48 hours to sign it, or we move to a full-on divorce fight and maybe fraud charges." "Fraud?" His voice cracked, panic creeping in. "What's that supposed to mean? Trying to sell a house she doesn't own? Starting a business with money she swiped? Pick one." Dwayne grabbed his bag and headed for the door. I stepped aside to let him pass. "One last thing," I called after him. "The buyer, Curtis Carver, your cousin, right? Tell him if he doesn't want to get tangled up in a fraud investigation, he needs to pull his offer on this house by the end of day." The look on Dwayne's face said it all. Less than an hour later, Greg called to say Curtis Carver had reached out to the real estate agent to cancel his bid on the lake house. That evening, I had the locks changed, swapped out the old security system, and set up a new one with cameras. I ordered takeout from the barbecue joint Lorraine and I used to hit up back when things were good, then ate on the porch, the lake stretching out calm and steady. Tomorrow would bring more lawyer moves, more heated calls, more picking apart the life we'd stitched together. But tonight, in the house that was still mine, I felt a quiet kind of strength. Not happiness, losing a marriage doesn't leave room for that, but the solid ground of knowing I'd held my own against someone trying to rip it all away. 3 weeks later, I sat across from Lorraine in Greg's conference room in Boise. Her lawyer, a young guy in a flashy suit with twitchy eyes, fiddled with his papers, trying to look like he had it together. Lorraine hadn't said a word to me since that kitchen showdown. She'd just sent a string of frantic legal threats, all of which Greg had swatted down like flies. Today was supposed to be a pre-trial meeting, but everyone knew it wouldn't go that far. The proof was too airtight. "Before we start," Greg said, cool as ever, "I'd like to enter these into evidence." He slid 3 documents across the table, the trust deed, bank records showing Lorraine's sneaky cash withdrawals, and a signed statement from Curtis Carver admitting to the shady house-buying scheme. Lorraine's lawyer skimmed the affidavit, his face dropping. He leaned over to mutter something to her. Her expression stayed hard, but I could see the fight draining from her eyes. "We're ready to settle," her lawyer said after their whispered huddle. Greg nodded. "Our terms are straightforward. Lorraine returns $110,000 of the stolen funds. She gives up any claim to the lake house and other trust-held properties. Calvin lets her keep her yoga studio and agrees not to push for criminal charges." "And if I say no?" Lorraine asked, her voice low, the first thing she'd said all day. "Then we hand this evidence to the prosecutor," Greg replied, matter of fact. "Fraud over $100,000 is a big deal in Idaho." Her lawyer touched her arm, signaling caution. "We need to talk this over privately." They stepped out for 15 minutes. When they came back, Lorraine wouldn't look at me. "We agree to the terms," her lawyer said. I didn't gloat or say a word, just signed where Greg pointed and watched Lorraine do the same, her handwriting as familiar as my own after 16 years of joint bills, birthday cards, and vacation plans. It was done. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of the lake house, coffee in hand, watching the sun creep over the water. The place felt different now. I'd redone the bathrooms, swapped out the faded siding for something sturdier, and put in stormproof windows. The upgrades weren't just practical, they were a way to scrub out the past and make space for something new. Word from old friends was that Lorraine and Dwayne had opened their yoga studio in Missoula, though it was a smaller setup than they'd hoped and struggling to stay afloat. I didn't take any pleasure in that. No thrill in their stumble, just a faint ache for what could have been if different paths had been chosen. The divorce had wrapped up 3 months back, clean and final. Lorraine paid back the agreed amount, which I'd funneled into a small retail plaza in downtown Boise, steady tenants, reliable cash flow. My phone rang. Brenda Walsh, my title agent. "Just checking in," she said when I picked up. "How's the lake house holding up?" "Better every day," I said, watching a pair of herons skim the lake. "Thanks for your help with that trust setup." "That's what I'm here for," she said. "Actually, I've got another property you might like. Commercial, similar setup to the lake house, good protection, solid returns." "Shoot me the details," I said. "I'm game." After we hung up, I kept my eyes on the lake. The water lapped at the shore, steady and unchanging, a rhythm no one could twist or steal. There was peace in that, in knowing some things just keep on, no matter what. I finished my coffee and headed inside.